Kris Kristofferson is such an interesting songwriter to me. You'll hear a lot of the great comedians talk about Norm Macdonald as the comedian's comedian. Norm was one of the funniest people who ever lived, but all of his attempts at primetime shows failed. He didn't have that mass appeal. Nobody ever really found the right fit for him, and so on. But your favorite comedian was greatly influenced by Norm. As an example, The Big Bang Theory is probably the biggest comedy of the last 25 years to have that mass appeal. The, quote, middle American audience ate that shit up, right? Well, Big Bang was created by Chuck Lorre, who used to write for The Roseanne Show alongside Norm. And I feel like Kris Kristofferson has a similar arc. He's more well-known, mainly because he was so close with so many legends. He played with Johnny Cash in the supergroup The Highwaymen. He acted, including a version of A Star is Born that, in my opinion, is a solid movie from the 70s. He was this very visible guy, but mainly a behind-the-scenes songwriter. A lot of people don't even know that he wrote Me and Bobby McGee. In fact, he released it first in 1970, about a year before Janis Joplin's version came out. The song is interesting to me simply because without it, we might not have the rest of Kristofferson's catalog. During the period leading up to this song, Kristofferson was failing hard, and it cost him a lot. His inability to land a hit song as a songwriter devastated him financially. It cost him his family. In fact, one part of the song wasn't written necessarily for Me and Bobby McGee. The line, "Freedom is just another word for nothing left to lose," it came to him while he was working on an oil rig in the Gulf of Mexico. That line kind of summed up his grief at the loss of his family and his failure as a songwriter, all of those bills, the alimony piling up at the door, and not really doing great at the oil rig gig either. It was almost like mindfulness before we knew what it was. It was a mantra that he took on at the time to sort of free himself of these burdens that he was carrying. He failed, but he was free from it all. Well, except the bills and the alimony. So he was ready to leave Nashville altogether and become a pilot. He already had some side hustles working as a helicopter pilot, and it was at this point he was ready to make that a full-time career. So enter Fred Foster. Foster was the owner of the record label that Kristofferson was working for, and he wasn't going to allow him to throw in the towel. Foster came to him with the idea for a song. At that time it was titled Me and Bobby McGee. Foster wanted Kristofferson to write a song about traveling around, using that title as an inspiration. And by the way, the name Bobby McGee was the name of a secretary at the label. Well, Kristofferson, he wasn't feeling it. He dodged Foster for several months, all while writing the song during the process. Because no matter what, Kristofferson, he was a songwriter. He couldn't help himself. So he's flying helicopters in Louisiana and finishing up the song that would save his career. He used inspiration from the movie La Strada, making it more like a lover's trip than Friends, as well as a work trip during a rainstorm on his way to New Orleans. Kristofferson, he felt good about the finished product. He felt good enough, at least, to return to Nashville to the delight of Foster. Immediately, Foster had the king of the road himself, Roger Foster, record the song. It was released in 1969, and then Kristofferson released his version in 70. Neither moved the needle. It was Joplin's version that took the song to the charts. Janis's version came out after she died. It was her death that created a lot of buzz around what would be her final album. The song was Joplin's only top 10 hit, and according to Kristofferson, it made it for him, and he thought of Janis every time he played the song henceforth. It was an emotional thing for a number of reasons. Obviously, the song made it possible for Kristofferson to return to his true calling, but he was very upset of the death of Joplin. They dated for a while, and Kristofferson could not listen to her final album around other people. He was too broken up. So talk about a mixed bag here for Kristofferson. He clearly adored Janis, but it was her death and the interest around that final album as a result that saved his career. So maybe somewhere in the universe that was Janis giving him a going-away present. We'll never know for sure. But what we do know for sure is without this song becoming a hit, we would have all missed out on the brilliance of Kris Kristofferson. And if I'm being honest, this is not one of my favorite Kristofferson songs. I love The Laws for the Protection of the People. Loving Her was easier than anything I'll ever do again. When I Loved Her, and my favorite, Sunday Morning Coming Down, all of which I'll cover at some point. But I wanted to start here because none of those gems of country music exist, if not for Me and Bobby McGee. By the way, it was changed to McGee on accident. Kristofferson thought Foster was saying McGee and not McKee, and Foster wasn't going to question somebody he knew was a genius.